morning, our viewers, and welcome yet again for another learning session. Thank you so much for committing time to always learn, and also thank you for sharing. Hope that everyone that learns from this platform shares the information. Today we are yet so happy to be hosting another important person that is going to be sharing with us, and I want to say that it's been a journey for us. This is the women's voice, and it's always, for us, it's always good to learn, to relearn, and also to keep sharing the information that we get, that is always updated. And today on the show, I have a guest. I'll let her introduce herself. But before, I want to say that today we are going to be looking at GBV survivor services and how to access them, specifically here in Uganda. And I hope that if you are on the show, please, you can share and let anyone that maybe might need this information get on the show to learn, to also know where they can get help or they can seek help. Rose, you're welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and then we'll begin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Annette, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for this platform, The Women's Voice, where we get an opportunity to be able to share important information around issues that affect women in Uganda. My name is Chigere Rose, and I work for and on behalf of the Women of Uganda and Women Rights Initiative as its Executive Director. I'm excited and at the same time humbled to be here to dissect issues that are very pertinent and to my heart, because I believe that we all deserve a violence-free society. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Rose. And to begin with, we'll go straight to understanding what GBV services are. Rose, please enlighten us. What are GBV services? Or if someone hears the term GBV services, what are these GBV? Because actually, maybe you can begin by defining what GBV is so that we can relate what GBV and then the services are.
Thank you so much, Annette. In brief, GBV in itself is GBV is a short term of gender-based violence, and gender-based violence specifically is a situation or a set of series of issues that might affect a person based on their gender. So when we talk about gender, we are dissecting what it means to the different persons and how they define themselves. You define yourself as a man, as a woman. Some people even define themselves differently. They are binary. So gender really is how you define yourself. And violence inflicted on you based on your gender, as simple as that. And because gender-based violence happens in Uganda, in Africa, and the rest of the world, a number of people, institutions, organizations, government departments have come up with various services. So when we talk about gender-based violence services, we are simply going to be speaking about what services we provide or what services are available to persons that are at risk of violence, persons that have faced violence and are now victims or survivors, to be sure that they overcome these situations that they are in, and to listen to them so that their experiences are valid, and provide compassionate care to them so that they are able to overcome the situations that they are facing. But most importantly, because the different services they face violence differently. Some survivors face violence in a healthy way, and so healthcare services are extended to them in order for them to heal and receive care. Sometimes the services are justice services. Sometimes they are welfare services. Some of these just safety services. So a range of services are provided, and that is why we want to dissect them and understand how to access them. Thank you, Annette.
I know that you have probably mentioned these a few services and of course that are needed, but I would want you to go service per service, and also I want our viewers to understand these services, do they come, is there a service that you might need first for you to access the other service, or it depends on the nature of violence?
Thank you for that, Annette, that question, Annette. First of all, before I go service per service, I want our viewers to understand that we have two different types of services. We have the prevention services, the services that are offered to persons at risk, victims and survivors, and also people that have not even faced any violent situation, to be able to understand what violence is, to be able to prevent violence from happening. So we have prevention services, and also we also have, after violence has happened, then we have the protection and redress services. So to start with, the prevention services are offered in a range, or in a range of, I would say, they are a range of services. We have awareness services. Very many NGOs and government departments, embassies, institutions, both local and international, provide prevention services by doing awareness trainings in communities, by conducting radio talk shows, by allowing us to read information materials that are produced through leaflets, banners. Sometimes they are just posters that are printed and shared to us in communities and in spaces where we stay. And so that is a prevention service. Those are services that are enabling us to understand what violence is, and if you are a perpetrator, so that you understand how you can stop, or if you are at risk, for you to assess that I might be abused, so I must do something about my situation. In other prevention services, we also encourage young people, women, men, children to speak out, because not so very many people can be able to speak about how they feel and what they feel is not right. So in those prevention services, that really happens. In other prevention services, when people in community detect that this person at any time might cause abuse to another person, they can decide to withdraw, like in cases where children are withdrawn from their guardians, from their parents, who they think are not in their perhaps right mental state to be able to provide a conducive environment and a violence-free environment. So, Annette, we have those prevention services, and also we have those response services, the services that we offer after someone has experienced violence. Let me give an example. If someone has been battery beaten, and they now have wounds, there are services that we offer. These services include healthcare services. They include access to legal aid and justice. They include welfare services, because sometimes violence actually includes children within a setting of a family, of a community. And also, we have other services that we give after the survivor has experienced violence, like skilling, like economic empowerment. And so I wanted to talk about that before we dissect them. But to come back to your question, Annette, uh, GBV services are given differently based on different survivors. So there are some survivors that report cases of violence at LC level, and the LC might sit and look into the matter, and then invite other parties that are involved for mediation meetings, or to listen to both parties to understand what is really happening, so that they determine if this case is going to be referred to another level. So the referral levels from the police go from the LCs go to police, and from the police determines which other services are available or are sufficient for a survivor. Let me give an example. If a child is faced with defilement and the case is reported at LC, the LC doesn't have the mandate to listen to that case or to either handle it. So immediately when this case is reported, the LCs refer this case to police, because the police has to record the case and then refer this case to court for access to justice. But in between there, the victim needs access to healthcare. So they have to go to the healthcare services, get checked, have access to PEP, get treatment, and then this information is added onto their file at the police, which is then forwarded into court for further investigation and for access to justice. So a range of services that are provided in Uganda are provided to various survivors who report different cases in different situations. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Rose. And also, considering that you have said that you have mentioned the LC and the police and also the court, someone would want to understand how easily can a survivor access these services? Because as I'm imagining a woman from probably deep in the village, and they are survivors of victims of gender-based violence. How easy is it for survivors to access such services?
Thank you, Annette. First of all, I want to categorically say that access to GBV services can become easier if survivors or if victims or if individuals know that these services exist. That is why we are actually having this conversation today, to let people know that the services exist. If someone doesn't know that a service exists, it's hard for them to access it. But our entry point in the community usually is the LC. We encourage that persons facing violence, men, women, children, report these cases to LC, because the LCs over time have been educated about the level of services that are given and the range of services that are available both at the village level and at higher levels. The government of Uganda has tried as much as possible to provide police posts in villages, and of course not every village has a police post, but usually there are police posts nearby. And if your case cannot be heard at the LC level, you can walk into a police post or any police center where it is located and you report your case. And of course, it's hard for survivors that do not know that these services exist. And Annette, I also want to say that when survivors are facing these situations, sometimes their self-esteem is low and they really can't pick up themselves to even go report a case to the police or to the LC, because they think that perhaps they might not be heard, or they think that maybe their situation is a private situation, and so it can't be a situation that they can share with the public. You know that the LC setting is a committee of 9 people, and so sometimes when they sit, there are people from the same village, and a survivor might be scared to go to the police because the LC, because they think that their issue might be heard, and then it might be the talk of the town or the talk of the village. And that is why but we also encourage that is a first entry point, to speak out to your neighbor, to speak out to your friend, to let them know, so that you are able to get good advice that allows you to overcome a situation. But the entry point is usually the LC and the police.
Okay, and also, being that you've mentioned that when someone has information about a service, it is easy for them to access. Also, and I also want to understand, these services usually for free, or you need to have some money, you need to have some resources, or you need to know someone to really access these services?
I would say that a range of these services are free, but in some cases, survivors have to part with money. For example, if you have to go to report a case and the police station is not near you, you would have to invest in a little transport to have to go to the police station, which is really your personal expenditure. But once you are at the police station or you are at the LC, we expect that the service that is going to be offered to you is a free service. Because at the police, we have the domestic violence desk. Of recent, they have established a sexual violence desk, where cases in relation to sexual violence, or cases of the sexual violence nature, are specifically handled by a specific desk. We also have the family and child protection unit at the police, and also the LCs have a committee, a committee where family issues are handled. And on this committee, there is always the LC, there is the defense, there's the representative for women, and in most cases, they also have a representative for the youth. And this committee listens to cases that come in and are reported by the people within a community. And so these services are free and are given free of charge. So women, children, men should not get scared to go to receive these services, because these people are available to support us, to enable us have access to freedom from violence. Thank you.
And Rose,
Yes.
on many occasions, I know that speaking about all those services, and it's easy for someone who really knows how deep and how this issue of GBV and violence against individuals can really affect their life. But specifically speaking about the services and how we can access them, how survivors can access them, and what they can do. Why is it really important for survivors to receive these services or to receive help? Because we sometimes speak about services like counseling, and it doesn't really make sense for many people. Like for someone to go for therapy and to have someone to speak to them. Why is it really important for someone that has been abused or someone that has been a victim of abuse to seek for help?
So, when you are faced with abuse, in very many situations, you make decisions that are rushed. And because you're acting on impulse, in most cases, you might end up also making the same mistake the perpetrator has made. Let me give an example. If you had a quarrel with your partner and then it erupted into beatings, if you are not rational enough, or if you are not thinking straight, you might end up hitting your partner too. And that doesn't make you a better person. So seeking services is a way of saying, I acknowledge that I am in this situation. I understand that I am weak and I need help. But also, the seeking of services is a sign of strength to say, I want to be a better person. I want to get help. I want to be a better version of me tomorrow. Because guess what? All the persons that do not seek these services and have continued to experience violence might also become perpetrators, because violence is a situation of who has power over at a certain period of time. If me as a wife in a home, I'm abused by my husband, chances are high that I am going to abuse my house manager. And chances are high that my house manager might abuse our children. So because violence is a situation of power over, acknowledging that I am in a violent situation or am in an abusive situation and seeking help is a sign of strength. It is a decision that you ought to take to allow yourself to be a better version of yourself, because you might end up hitting the person, and before you know it, this person dies and you end up in prison. And you might spend so many years in prison, but it was not something that was planned. So for me, it is important for people to acknowledge that they need help and seek professional help from persons that are non-judgmental, that are going to receive them with compassion, that are going to give them the care that and that are going to validate the experience. Because it is important for survivors, when they report cases to us, for us to validate them, to say it is okay. I hear you, I understand you, I might not be in the same situation that you're in, but I know that it has happened and I believe you. So that is the biggest importance of seeking for these services. Whichever range of services we are speaking about, be it healthcare, be it counseling and psychosocial support, be it economically getting empowered after you have faced the violent situation, be it just having a safe space where you feel that you are safe. All these range of services are enabling the survivor or the victim or the person at risk to be able to be a better version of yourself. Very many people have grown up in violent situations and then they also become perpetrators because now it is a learned behavior. My father was battering my mother as I was growing up, for example, and then they are battering their wife too because they think it is something that is right. Yeah, that's what I can say on it.
Thank you, Rose. Um, we all know that we live in a community and in a
True,
society. There are relatives, there are friends, there are neighbors, there are
true.
pastors,
Mhm.
there are people that at some point support us. Uh,
Yeah.
Please share with us what specific help could a survivor or someone that is facing violence need in that particular moment for probably the neighbors or for the relatives or for the family, immediate family members or friends to help them seek for services. Because yes, you mentioned the services are free, but is there a way that people around you can get to help you or to support you?
Yes. There are very many ways within which the community around us, because it is the first setting where we live in. By the time you get to the police, your neighbor has had you being beaten. It is important that you have a network of people around you, your relatives, your friends, your neighbors, to understand the situation that you're going through. What is very absurd is that violence is shameful. It makes the survivor feel that they are ashamed, and as such, they begin to withhold information because they think that they are going to perhaps be the talk of the town or the talk of the village, and so they don't really speak out on what is affecting them. But always in the communities, our neighbors, our friends, our relatives are armed with the right information, and they know how to support us best to overcome these situations. For example, if your neighbor knows that you have been battered and you run to them, they might open up their doors to say, "Let us go to the police," or "Let us escort you to the LC," because they know that the LC is an arm of government that allows these cases to be listened to, and so they will ably escort you to the. And if they really can't, you can be able to call your friends, you can be able to call your relatives, or you can be able to call your church leader to talk to them about a situation. And these people will act differently. The church leader, if you are in a setting of a church, might invite in your husband or your spouse to talk to them, including your relatives and neighbors, perhaps. If they can't do that, the LC has the right to invite in this perpetrator for questioning or for listening in on what really happened. Because there's always the story is always in a double folded side. The victim tells their story, or survivor. The perpetrator can also tell their story. And if everyone is listened to, it can be easier for communication to be thorough, and it can be easier for solutions to be found. So, because the community is a setting where these atrocities happen, these abuses happen, it is important for women, men, and children to know where to begin from. Your network of people around you is best suited to give the first support. And perhaps they can even offer, we are going to drive, let me bring my boda and ride you to the police station so that you can report your case and it can begin from there. That's already a service that is being provided to you. It might not look important, but someone offering you transport to go to an LC or to go to a police station, it's already allowing you to have access to a service. Yeah, so definitely it is important. And of course, the range of services that they offer are also different. The friend might offer advice, a neighbor might offer a temporary shield or space where you're running to run away from a violent situation, and the LC will definitely look into your situation deeper than your friend or your neighbor. The church leader obviously comes in because they are a part of your community, and it is sometimes the church leaders are people of integrity and are believed in, and so when they speak to perpetrators and victims, their information is listened to very well, and it goes to the right space where we expect it to go. So, Annette, I think that the community is really important in ensuring that the services are accessed by survivors and victims.
Thank you, Rose. Rose, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned that different organizations and different government departments and other institutions offer a range of services. I know
True.
that I know that also the Women Rights Initiative has been offering services to GBV survivors, but I want to understand, based on your knowledge and your experience, where is the gap in service delivery? Because of course we are speaking about survivors going to seek for services and accessing them, but where is the gap? Because we've also had a lot of survivors that have sought for services but they haven't received the services, or for some reason there have been challenges, or there have been a lot of things that have prevented them from seeking for services. So where do you see the gap? And also you tell us how best you think uh, this can be dealt with or handled.
Thank you, Annette. We we still have quite a number of gaps in the service delivery, but I think I would start with the information gap. We as service providers need to do more in terms of creating awareness and using platforms that are that can reach a multitude of people. Because when we talk about the services that are provided at police, not everyone in Uganda knows that there's a child and family protection unit at police. Not everyone knows that there's a GBV violence desk or an SGB violence desk at police. So it is imperative and important to have this information ring into the minds of the communities or the people that we serve. So the information gap is really existent, and once we work on that, we will have more people have access to these services. And also the access to justice setting within the courts of law and the judiciary is quite overwhelmed by the number of cases. The service providers, the lawyers, the judges are not very sufficient in terms of the number of cases that they receive. You find that one judge has about in a year they have about 500 cases to listen to. And of course the process of access to justice involves investigation, it involves documentation, it involves presentation of witnesses, and so because it's a process, usually it is not as quick as it should have been. But that can be overcome through government looking into how to expand the service providers, the lawyers and the judges in the justice and law sector, such that the cases can be handled simultaneously and the survivors have access to justice as they deserve. So for me, those two rank high. And equally, not very many survivors know that once they are sexually abused, they can walk into a police and they can have a form and they can go to be checked and receive a health service at the local health centers, because the government of Uganda has thrived and tried to be able to provide this service, but not everyone knows that this service is existent at a health center 4s and 3s and main hospitals or referral hospitals wherever they are set. So because some survivors are very far away from where the service can be provided, it's usually a gap that can take long, because in cases of defilement, for example, or rape, we immediately refer this survivor to have access to a medical checkup and then recommendation for particular treatment. And if the survivor doesn't really know this, they might end up spending the 72 hours in the home, crying and trying to find who to talk to, because they don't know that they need to rush to be able to get this treatment. So those gaps are really existent, but also the referral pathways and mechanisms are not very known to the persons that we work with or the survivors. If survivors know that from police, if from LC I can go to police, from police My case can either I can go to a health center, or I can go to a shelter to receive services, rehabilitation services, or I can go to a healthcare unit, or I can perhaps go and live with a relative for some time, as I give time to the perpetuator to see how best we can sort out the issue. If they don't really know this, it's harder for them to have access to service. So I think that those gaps still exist. But if we widen and intensify the awareness efforts on all social media platforms, on in the communities, on radios, on televisions, on advertisements, in this day and age, a lot of people are using internet. So having adverts and infographics that educate people about violence. For example, if we have, even if it's just this new and very exciting platform where young people are connected to. I tend to forget the name because I don't really use it, but there's this platform, Annette, kindly remind me, where there's a lot of videos that are produced.
The TikTok.
Yes, the TikTok. If we also have someone or a range of services, and the police is talking about this information, and the non-profit organizations are doing infographics that young people can have access to and ask questions and comment and then seek services. Perhaps we can have more people understand about these services and how best they can be able to help, because there are actually individuals within communities that are willing to help, that are ambassadors of change, that don't want to see violence, that want violence-free spaces, but they don't know how to connect and refer persons that they see require this help. So perhaps we also need to look into that so that we are able to capture the audiences and educate them from wherever they are. Thank you.
Wow, I think that I think that it's a brilliant idea, because you when the society changes, or when the norms and all what we probably considered the order of the day changes, and we are able to live in a society that is peaceful, and also be independent people, and also health people that can contribute to the development of our country, and to the growth of our homes. And I know that people that are following are learning, and I know that this information, people that are not on can always go back and watch and also learn. But Rose, you, as I listened as you're speaking, you mentioned that sometimes uh, courts are overwhelmed with cases. That tells me that
Sure.
there is a lot that is happening. And also, I want to acknowledge that if a big government institution is overwhelmed with cases, how about a small non-government organization that is working on a few resources? I want you to speak about, because I know that even when an institution is offering GBV services, there are a lot that needs to be done that it cannot do because of the resources. I want you
Sure.
to speak about the referral system and why it is very important for other partners, and probably to work in a network, because I'm imagining a case of sexual abuse or defilement, or a rape case, and all the services that a survivor might need to regain the self-esteem and dignity. And I'm imagining the resources that can go in just one case. So that
Yeah.
is why I would want you to speak about the referral system and why it is really important for us to work in a kind of network, because it's an issue that affects everyone. And I believe that because of because of the gravity,
Mm.
the gravity, we need to at some point have that kind of system, to if we are to really help the survivors that are going to
Mm.
seek for the services, after understanding that the services are available, and
Mm.
it's their right anyway to seek for these services.
Mm. Thank you, Annette. I think that for me, the way I look at the referral services, I look at it as a basket. You know, when you're weaving a basket, you weave it from the ground to the top. But if you weave the first 6 lines and you don't weave the last 10 lines, the basket might not look beautiful. So referral services also look like that. Every service provider, both be it in the government setting or the private setting or the community setting, it is like a weaving a basket. I'll take your very example of a survivor that has experienced defilement and requires support. You know that when this case is reported to the LC's role is to refer this case to police because it has to be registered because it's a criminal case. And so when the LC refers the case to a police, the police also does its work to register the case, and then it gives the technical advice of the survivor going to have access to emergency treatment. Usually they give PEP, but they also ask the doctor or the medical personnel handling that situation to write a report, because that report is required to be put on the file so that when the file is finally processed, it can be able to go to court. You understand that from the LC, there was a service that was given, an information service and a referral service. And then from the police, when we arrive at the police, there is documentation, there is referral to the healthcare unit, which are usually government health facilities. And when these facilities receive the client, they also do their role. They check, they give treatment, and they produce a report. They don't only stop there, they have to avail themselves in court when they are invited to give their personal their view of what they saw on that particular day and how they handled the situation. So you can see that there's a weaving of those services. And if the survivor needs to be withdrawn from the community, that is when the safe spaces come in the shelters. In Uganda, we have a range of shelters that are offering these services in the different regions, in the western region, in the eastern region, in the central, in the northern. They are all around. There are not very many shelters, but they truly exist, and they are offering services of making sure that survivors receive a safe space, they receive counseling, and they are offered an environment that is conducive for them to heal and think about what their next step in life is going to be. And so looking at all this, if it is not done in a manner of referral, then we can't even offer the services. If the LC doesn't refer the case to police, police might never be able to handle this case or refer it, because the police also refers these cases to courts, to the health centers, to the safe shelters. Sometimes they invite in the persons for mediation. There are those cases where they invite in for mediation and alternative conflict resolution. And even at courts, in the courts of law, there's a provision for discussing out of court and having to resolve this conflict or issue out of court. So for me, I think that they are very important. And partners within the private sector, within the NGO sector and government have to look at this as very important. Let me give an example. At the shelter, at the Nyonga Women's Shelter, while we offer these services, we cannot rehabilitate and offer shelter to boys who are above 12 years. So that actually means that if a survivor comes with their child who is above that age and they are a boy, we have to partner with a different agency to be able to give this child a safe space. And if we don't have this referral pathway and weave of network of different partners, it is hard for us to handle that case, because the mother will be worried that their child is going to go back in an abusive situation, or they will not even have access to this service because they want to look for a place where they want to stay with their child. So for me, I think that we cannot run away as service providers from working through networks and referrals, because they are a space that elevates us. Also, because you can't do everything. Every institution has, I would say, in the world of business, they say that you are experienced, you are handling that particular issue, and you know it by the tip of your hands. So if someone has experience in handling child abuse, and they're able to offer therapy and counseling in a better way, if you refer a child that has been traumatized to them, they will handle it to the best of their knowledge and ability. And if someone is dealing with men that are traumatized and abused, they will know how to handle that situation, because every situation is handled differently. So for me, weaving networks and working within those referral pathways for eases the process of service provision and allows everyone to do their part for this particular survivor to be well again. Thank you, Madam Anit.
Thank you, Rose. I know that a lot of violence happens in homes because
True.
it's where everything, if it's where, when you live with a person or with people for a long time, sometimes, you're not willing to be patient. Sometimes a lot of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Rose, I want you to speak to the women and also to
Mm-hmm.
speak to the men that live in the homes. How best can they live in harmony? Because I know that that is where things go wrong. And before you know it, someone is throwing a cup, someone is slapping.
Banging
So
tables.
yes, please briefly speak about speak to the men and to the women that live in the home and to the children. How best can they live in harmony, and how best can we all cooperate?
Yeah, thank you, Annette. That is quite a it's quite something big to dissect, but to briefly talk about it, I believe with all honesty that communication is a very important element. um, when you're living with people, men, women, children in a community, because in Uganda, and particularly in my community, we live in extended family systems. We don't live a life of nuclear families. It is important to have open communication. By open communication, I simply mean speaking about what is affecting you and what you feel you're not happy about, satisfied about, or what you think is not going on right. Because that is where usually the situations are bred from. That is where we always get challenges, because people keep quiet with issues that are affecting them. And once the issues keep on building, you find that you get agitated, you get angry, you get disgusted with someone, you feel as if they're not understanding you. So open communication and listening to each other, but also mutual respect is an important issue. Mutual respect, we ought to respect each other as human beings. Man or woman, we ought to respect each other, because if someone feels disrespected, they obviously want to find a ground where they want to feel that their power is asserted. And I talked as we began that violence is an issue of who has power over. So if mutual respect does not happen, someone will want to seek and forcefully get this respect. So for me, respecting each other brings in dignity, brings in integrity, and also allowing ourselves to feel good just like we want other people to feel good. If you really are in a situation of living in a family with other people, try as much as possible to ensure that they are happy and you're happy too. If you are affected by being beaten, why would you beat another person? If you are affected by not providing resources in a home, as a person that is concerned, why would you expect something any different from the other people? So don't do what you don't want someone to do to you. If something hurts you as a person, it means it might hurt another person. So if we are able to refrain and live in harmony by listening to each other, by respecting each other, by understanding that we can hurt and other people can hurt us, then we begin a journey of consciously thinking about our actions and where they will lead us. Because one action can affect the entire family. One action can affect one individual, and that one individual can make another action that can affect an entire generation. So for me, that's what I think and believe.
Thank you so much, Rose, for coming through on this show and for sharing such important information. And for our viewers, we want to appreciate you for always yearning and for always committing time to learn. This is the Women's Voice, a platform for women rights initiative, and please share as much as possible. If someone has missed this, you can still go back to our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, and please follow and share. We'll yet come back for another learning session next week, same time. May God bless you.
Bless you too. Thank you for having me.